Hi everyone, I'm Kait Ballenger and I am the author of the Seven Range Shifters Paranormal Romance series. I'm so excited to be joining you for Romance Author Storytime today, and I am going to be reading from book 3 in my Seven Range Shifter series, Wicked Cowboy Wolf. So I'm going to be reading the sort of meet-cute between the hero and heroine, if you want to call it that. So the background is that the hero is a sort of criminal rogue wolf who lives outside the law, and the heroine is the younger sister of the Grey Wolf Packmaster, which is the pack that the series centers around. So this is kind of the moment leading up to when they meet. There has been this big sort of soiree on the Grey Wolf Ranch Wolfpack Run, and May thinks that she sees Rogue there, but she's not sure if it's him. So there's kind of a question of whether she actually saw him there or not, and this is the scene that ensues. So I hope you enjoy it. The pink summer sunset had long since faded to nightfall by the time May returned to her cottage on the other side of the Grey Wolf compound. As she approached home, she cringed at the thought of the poor excuse she'd given Alexander. There was no way he'd bought her lie. Sure, she and Maverick had scheduled Alexander for a meeting with the Pact, which was a small step forward, but if they didn't get him on board and fast, their prospects were limited. But May was determined. She would find a way to save her pack. She had to. Feeling more than a little defeated, she shuffled up to her door, scanning the other nearby pack cabins. Hers was one of many adjacent to the dining hall in the main compound building, which housed the elite warriors and the main pack offices. She grabbed her keys from her purse. As she did so, she glanced over her shoulder, as if she might find the rogue lingering there in the darkness, but she didn't. He'd disappeared without a trace. She released a long sigh. From what she knew of his dangerous reputation, it was just like the arrogant bastard to trod right into a pack of alphas that would just as soon see him tore apart. He really was a rogue with a devil-may-care attitude to match his title. She gripped her keys tighter in her hand. After unlocking her front door, she slipped inside. Immediately, the sound of tiny hooves clopping against the tile sounded from the darkness. She flicked on the dim entryway light. Tucker, her teacup pig, stared up at her from the white-tiled floor, his beady black eyes sparkling with pleasure at her arrival. He let out a pleased oink. May grinned. Bending down, she scooped him up into her arms, coddling him like a baby as she cooed at him. Still a piglet, Tucker was no bigger than a small dog, and according to the breeder, he'd been the runt of the teacup litter and would likely stay small. With Tucker cradled against her, May made quick work of feeding him a bottle of milk replacer before snuggling him into his fluffy pink dog bed in her living room. Once the piglet was rocked to sleep, she showered before she changed into her nightgown and settled into the comfort of her bed sheets. The day had left her worn out, but her mind refused to calm. Had she really seen the rogue, or had it all been in her head? That question still plagued her. She wasn't sure how he would have gotten onto the ranch without detection, especially considering the heightened security for the reception. She shook her head. It must have been her imagination, a memory triggered by the stress of Alexander's questions. The rogue couldn't possibly have shown up at Wolfpack Run only to disappear again, though it had felt so real. She sighed, sinking deeper into her mattress. It wouldn't be the first time she'd thought of him since their encounter in the vampire coven. Heat rose from her cheeks. She'd dreamed of him almost every night since, and not in the way she should have. The memory of the night when her life had been threatened by bloodsuckers was a dark one, but when she dreamed of that night, of him, her dream often took a completely different course from reality. Instead of dreaming of the danger she'd faced, she'd woken more than once to the thought of his uncharacteristic heroism as he whisked her from the vampire cells, only to find her own hand exploring between her legs. It was sick, she knew it. She shouldn't be attracted to a dangerous criminal like him. Despite that, he stirred something primitive inside her. She knew what sort of dark circles he traveled in, yet she couldn't seem to help it. A wolf like the rogue was everything forbidden to her. A non-gray wolf, a vigilante, not to mention one of her brother's enemies, and the antithesis of every criterion she should consider for a mate. Somehow, that only made him more appealing. By her birthright, she was destined for a Grey Wolf alpha warrior. She shuddered at the thought. The Grey Wolf warriors were all fine men, handsome cowboys, but they were practically her brothers. May tossed and turned in her bed as she tried to put the rogue from her mind, but still his face taunted her. Eventually her hand trailed beneath her nightgown. Maybe if she eased this ache, the desire would go away. Maybe then sleep would claim her. Slowly her fingers probed the folds between her legs, locating her own clit. She knew her body, what she liked. Gently she massaged and probed as she remembered how it had felt when the warmth of his breath had brushed against her ear, the deep timbre of his voice thrumming through her. "You won't regret this," he'd whispered. She imagined his lips trailing downward. What would it be like to be with a criminal like him? Something told her every touch, every caress would be more powerful, more sinful, just more. Soon she was moaning in climax, the walls of her core tightening in a delicious wave that sent a rush of moisture straight to her center. She cried out, arching her back against the pillows. As the last throes of her orgasm shook her, she relaxed into her sheets, sated, though it was little more than a fantasy. At that thought, a pang of sorrow thrummed through her. That was all her dreams would ever be, fantasy. Not just him, but all her heart's desires. She wanted more than she could have. She always had. She loved her pack, but the duties that bound her to them had never been her choice. She may have been a Grey by birth, but if she were braver, if she'd lived her own life, she'd make her own choices. If she were free. May lay there, the weight of the things she'd never have pressing down on her, constraining her chest so much that she struggled to breathe. If only. At least she could dream. Her dreams and desires were hers alone. She released a long sigh, switching on the light of her bedside table as she reached for a book to read, until the sound of a familiar voice came from the darkness. "Evening, Princess." So that's the the setup to the meeting with Maeve and Rogue. So I hope you enjoyed that little excerpt of Wicked Cowboy Wolf. It's the third book in the series. 1 and 2 are back there as well if you're new to the books. Wicked Cowboy Wolf is available at all major retailers, and I hope that you really enjoyed that excerpt, and I will be available to answer any and all questions in the comments. So thanks for joining me for this Romance Author Storytime. Bye, guys.